Morning, everybody. Dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. I was mulling over my mind as to what are the aspects I should cover. I had not been given any guideline by the organizers as to what they would like me to cover. So I decided that I'll tell you about where we are at, where we are going, what we have done, and what the challenges are. Now, when our government came to office, to encapsulate, what I'll do is I'll cover all the aspects of energy. One is availability, coupled with energy security. The second is access, which includes transmission, distribution, etc. Third, of course, is viability. Fourth is the challenges ahead. And all this in the context of climate change and the imperative need to bring about an energy transition. An imperative need not because we are the highest emitters in the world. We are one of the lowest emitters in the world, in fact. On a per capita basis, our emissions are approximately 2 tons per capita. The world average is approximately 6 tons per average. That's the world average, mind you, which includes all countries, including countries where access is not there, etc. It includes all countries. So the world average is about 6.3 tons per capita. Our per capita emissions are just about 2 tons per capita. If you look at the global carbon dioxide load, the legacy carbon dioxide load till date, we are responsible for just about 4% of that global carbon dioxide load today, which is causing this rise in global temperature. Whereas our population encompasses about 17.2, 17.3%. So not because of, we look at the need for energy transition as an overarching requirement, not because we are the highest emitters in the world, but because our government believes in leaving behind a healthier environment for our children, grandchildren, etc. So it arises out of belief. Now coming around to the overall aspects of energy in our country. One was that when our government came to office, the overall deficit was approximately 4.2%. That was in 13-14. In 12-13, it was 8.9%. So there was a deficit. We were not producing the quantum of electricity which we needed. We've added 184,000 megawatts till date. 184,000 megawatts till date. Today, our established capacity is 417,000 megawatts. That's 417 gigawatts. And the peak demand has accelerated in the recent past. This year, it increased in the first half by about 10%. Last year, it increased by about 8%. So it's increasing at a frenetic pace. And it will continue increasing. The good news is, it's increasing. That I see as good news, because that means our economy is growing. Our economy is growing at 7.2%. If you look at if you take into account the non-monetized portions of the economy, I think we are growing at 8.5%. So, but even if you take 7.2%, and the requirement for increasing our capacity is huge. That's a challenge which I'll come to later. But as of now, our established capacity is 417 gigawatts. The peak demand which we have reached is 223 gigawatts. So we have sufficient established capacity. That is one part of it. The challenge remains. I'll come to the challenge. This is not the end of the story. There is a challenge there. The challenge, I'll come to later. What we have done, I'll tell you. So as of now, we have enough capacity, as of now. That's qualification you must know. The second challenge was actually connecting the whole country into one grid. So we added almost about 179.9 thousand circuit kilometers of transmission lines, 180,000 circuit kilometers of transmission lines. Some of these transmission lines span the highest altitudes in the world, right up to Leh, Janskar, etc. And some of these transmission lines are cutting edge, 765 kV DC, 765 HVDC. So high voltage direct current. One of the highest HVDC's capacities in the world. So that's where we are at insofar as transmission is concerned. Now we can transfer about 112,000 megawatts from one part of the country to another. That means we have no congestion as of now. We have a market, we have a thriving market, we have a growing market. We have 2 exchanges. We've directed recently that they should be coupled. In fact, we have 3 exchanges. We've directed recently that they should be coupled so that there's a uniform market clearing price and there's no congestion. So as of now, we are happy as far as transmission is concerned. 112,000 megawatts wheeling from one corner of the country to another is quite satisfactory from our point of view. We've connected every part of our country. And it's a single grid running on one frequency with a national load dispatch center. You have regional load dispatch centers, but it's a single grid running on one frequency. And that makes it the largest single grid in the world. So as of now, we are happy, but challenge remains. I'll come to that. The challenge remains. The third is distribution. Now, distribution, we spent about, the 2.1 lakh crores, 2.2 lakh crores under Deen Dayal Gram Jyoti Yojana, IPDS, Saubhagya. These are names of schemes which we launched for strengthening the distribution systems. Now, we constructed almost about 2,932 new substations. We upgraded almost about 3,900 odd substations. We added about 6.5 lakh, or in 100,000, I mean 650,000 circuit kilometers of ST lines, about 250,000 kilometers of LT lines, 112,000 circuit kilometers for agriculture feeders, etc. To strengthen our distribution system. We have added an additional 750,000 transformers. And, all these steps resulted in removing congestion in our distribution systems. It resulted in a more robust distribution system. So the net result of adding capacity, making sure that it can be transferred to wherever it is necessary by strengthening the transmission system and the distribution system. The net impact which it had was that, we have a feeder monitoring system. So all the feeders are monitored centrally by the government of India. And almost all our feeders are 100% metered. So the availability of power in rural areas went up from about 12.5 hours in 2015 to about 22.5 hours today. That's rural areas. In urban areas, it's about 23.5 hours. And this includes all regions of our country. And the Himalaya villages in the high Himalayas, the extreme northeast, the villages in the deserts of Rajasthan. That is the availability, average availability in our country, in urban areas, at 23.5 hours. Actually, it's 23 hours and some 45 minutes or approximately, and rural areas about 22.5 hours. We aim to make it 24 hours. So that is a challenge. And the growing demand is a challenge. We've also changed the way business is done in the power sector. It's totally different today from what it was. For example, I'll tell you. Now, initially what used to happen was that transmission, you wanted to get access to transmission, you applied. You had to indicate as to from where you will transfer energy or where your power generation capacity is and where you will be selling. And then you will be given connectivity for that. So it used to be specific point of generation, point of consumption. Or, if somebody wanted to get connected to the grid, as a consumer, like a distribution company, they would need to indicate as to which are the areas from where they'll be drawing power, so that, that transmission system can be strengthened if necessary in those areas. There was logic behind it. But that is history. That is history. Once we strengthened our transmission systems and we made it capable of transmitting power from any quantum from anywhere to anywhere, then we decided that those rules are outdated, history. So we brought in the general network access. So you just get connected to the transmission system. Now we treat the transmission system as one whole. You get connected to the transmission system, and you can buy today from, you are here, or you are in Gujarat or Bihar or wherever, or Bhopal, let's say, today you can buy from Tamil Nadu, tomorrow you can buy from Guwahati, on a third day you can buy from some power station in Jharkhand or Chhattisgarh. And you can sell also, if you are based in Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand, you can sell today to Tamil Nadu, tomorrow to Karnataka, day after tomorrow to Maharashtra or wherever. So general network access. We added more and more products in our market. So we decided that we added the real-time market, the day-ahead market. And all this we integrated renewable energy also. That's another story which we are coming to. Now in renewable energy, as I said, our Prime Minister, and our government believes in leading behind a healthy environment. So we set huge targets for ourselves, or at least the Prime Minister set huge targets for me, for us. Now, one part I have left out, and that is access, before I come to renewables. Now, when our government came to office, about 18,500 odd villages and about hundreds and thousands of hamlets were not connected with electricity. Imagine, this is 2014, we got independence in 1947, and that was the status in 2014. We decided, our government decided, we'll connect every village, every hamlet, and every home. Now, so we did that. The Prime Minister gave me a time of 1,000 days to connect every village. I did it in 900 odd days. So, I did it well in time. Similarly, I connected every village, every hamlet, and every home. We connected almost 29 million homes in just about 19 months. So that was the largest expansion of access ever in the history of the power sector, in the history of electricity ever, in 19 months. In no other country had this been done. But we did it. And I took certificates from state government saying that no house which existed on the date on which the scheme was launched has been left out. I've got certificates from every state government to prove it. Still, I have left, I've said that if you come across any house which existed, houses keep getting built. Our urbanization is expanding, the population is expanding. So houses keep getting built. So we took responsibility for all the houses which existed on the date the scheme was launched. And I said that any house which existed on the date that the scheme was launched should not be left out. If you have missed it out, it doesn't matter. Go ahead and connect it. We'll give you the money. So access we have ensured completely. Now the energy transition. As I said, we set huge targets for ourselves. So in 2015 in COP21, we set a target for ourselves in our NDCs that by 2030, we'll have 40% of our capacity come from non-fossils. We achieved that. We achieved that in 2021. And today, I have 42% of my capacity coming from non-fossils. That's 7 years still to go. We already achieved that target. So we upped our ambition in Glasgow. And we said that, by 2030, we'll have 50% of our capacity coming from non-fossils. And actually, by 2030, so this was again, this commitment was on the safer side, because by 2030, we'll have 65% of our capacity coming from non-fossils. That is the rate at which we are going, and that is what we shall achieve. So 500 gigawatts of non-fossils by 2030 is our internal target, and we'll achieve that, 500 gigawatts. So we are going to add 50 gigawatts every year from henceforth. That's the bidding trajectory which we have laid down. As I said, despite the fact that we are one of the lowest emitters in the world, we have emerged as one of the fastest growing renewable energy capacities in the world. We have emerged as the most attractive destination for investments in the world. Today, my non-fossil capacity is in the region of about 180,000 megawatts. That's my non-fossil capacity. And I'll be adding 50,000 megawatts every year. What makes it possible is that my demand is growing. And what makes my demand grow is the fact that our economy is growing. And this economy will continue to grow at this rate or at higher rates for the next 2-3 decades. So that is what brings me to the challenge which we have. And it's a huge challenge. If you have an economy growing at that rate, you have the power demand growing at that rate, you need capacity. Because one thing, is given, and that is we shall provide enough electricity for meeting our needs, for meeting the needs of our growth, for maintaining, for ensuring that we keep growing at the same rate. Without energy, you can't grow. The electricity is required for everything. And we also are progressively electrifying our economy. The rate at which we are adding electric vehicles is going to be accelerated. We are adding more and more charging stations. As we add more and more charging stations, the number of electric vehicles which are sold is increasing exponentially. And that is the direction we want to take. Because we have one other objective in our mind. And that is that we want to reduce our dependence on foreign sources of energy. That is a challenge. So the rate of growth is a challenge. The capacity addition is a challenge. It's a huge, huge challenge. Now, ideally, I would want all this capacity to be renewables. We are adding huge quantity of renewables. 50,000 megawatts per year is huge. But the problem is, the challenge is that renewables are not round the clock. You need energy round the clock. Factories run 2 shifts, 3 shifts. You need energy round the clock. So you can either have round the clock renewable energy by adding storage. The problem is that storage is expensive. Right now, the storage cost is approximately 10 rupees per kilowatt hour. That's battery storage. If pumped storage is approximately about 5.5 rupees per kilowatt hour. So what we have done is we've come out with a policy for encouraging pumped hydro. We have mapped out all the possible sites for pumped hydro. We've made it open. Anybody can go and start developing it. And we have huge capacities of pumped hydro coming up. But that itself won't be sufficient. The quantum of storage which we'll need is humongous. So we need to build battery storage. We need to start manufacturing battery storage. Battery for grid storage. We put in place a PLI, Production Linked Incentive Scheme for manufacturing of batteries. But that was tilted heavily towards electric mobility. Fair enough. So we need another, that's what I've told the government, we need to have another production linked incentive scheme for grid scale storage. Because we need huge quantities of grid scale storage so that we can have round the clock renewables. And we'll get there, we'll do that. The problem is that right now, the manufacturing capacity of storage in the world is very limited. And 77% of that capacity is in China. And that, I started off by thinking that I will not mention any names, but it came out. So 77% of that capacity in China. So that has supply chain issues. So we need to build up our own supply chains for batteries. So we need manufacturing of batteries. And the problem is that because of the minuscule battery storage, grid scale battery storage manufacturing capacity, the prices of storage are high. We need to add to that capacity. So we shall add to that. Now, it would have helped if the developed countries had also, been serious about tackling climate change and decided that storage is essential and decided to add manufacturing of grid-scale storage batteries. But that has not happened. And so that thereby hangs a tail, as the saying goes. That thereby hangs a tail. Now, if you are serious about energy transition, you'll talk about storage, you'll think about storage. You'll think about adding grid-scale storage manufacturing capacity, if you are serious about it. But as I said, we've decided that no matter what other countries do, we have a mission, we shall fulfill it. We need huge quantum of energy, and we would rather have that from renewables than from fossils. But it will take time. It will take time. Now, till storage becomes viable. And then again, we have to ensure that the cost of power is not huge. If you have renewables coming at 2 rupees 35 paise, 2 rupees 30 paise, and the cost of storage is 10 rupees, that makes your power cost 13 rupees. Now that is a wee bit expensive for our common man. It's expensive for our common man. So we can't afford to have huge quantity of storage now until then we increase the volumes. But we are adding storage. We are adding storage. And we'll keep adding storage so as to make sure that the demand goes up, so as to make sure that the investments come in manufacturing. And my invitation to all of you is that come and invest in storage. The demand is there, we'll give you the demand. That is a challenge which we have. Now, till that happens, I need to add capacity. We are adding capacity. We have about 50,000 megawatts of capacity under various stages of construction in thermal, in fossil. And we thought that should be sufficient, but now I see that may not be sufficient. But if it is not sufficient, we'll start other plants. We'll start more capacities for thermal. Have no doubt that we shall not shy away from it, because my first priority is to make sure that I supply enough electricity for our growth, for our development and growth, and that shall happen. I don't feel shy about it, because the other countries, use fossil fuels. They are different fossil fuels, but they all spew carbon dioxide, whether it is shale or whether it is natural gas or whether it is diesel, whether it's petrol, or heavy, heavy oils. They all spew carbon dioxide. So our pace of energy transition will be one of the fastest in the world. But at the same time, we are not going to compromise with the availability of electricity for our growth. That needs to be understood, and that needs to be given. It's given. So I need to add more capacity. I need to start adding more capacity if I'm going to meet my demand. By 2030, the capacity which I will need, today my capacity is 417 gigawatts. Now in 2030, at a conservative rate of growth of demand, I see the capacity crossing 800 gigawatts. That's double in 7 years. Today, 23. Now, that is a challenge. So we shall meet that challenge. And that is at a conservative rate of growth. A higher rate of growth will lead to a requirement of 850 to 900 gigawatts. That's more than double. Challenge. The second challenge, so this is as far as capacity is concerned. The second challenge is, there are some other, attendant factors which are there in my mind, which we need to take care of. Now, those attendant factors are that we import coal for blending. We have been importing coal for blending from 2004 onwards. And I believe, looking at the present status, I believe we'll need to continue import for blending. But we need to reduce that import for blending as much as possible. That's our requirement. Because as I said, one of our missions is to make sure that our energy dependence on imported sources gets reduced. So that is a challenge. For that, we'll have to strengthen our, logistics for transportation from the coal-bearing areas. We'll also have to, we are doing it. We'll also have to ensure that we are able to exploit the coal resources which we have, so that we are not dependent upon imports. And for that, privatization is necessary, so coal blocks are being auctioned out. We are taking action, we are going there. The previous governments did not factor this into account, but we are doing it. So we are auctioning off coal blocks so that our dependence on imports reduces. We import a lot of coking coal for making steel. Now, so we want to go the green hydrogen way, so that we reduce our imports for making steel, etc. So our feedstock also has to transition to clean. because, as I said, we are committed to the environment. So green hydrogen is a major priority for us, green hydrogen, green ammonia. Now, thereby also hangs a tail, I'll tell you, I'll come to that. So as I said, insofar as renewables are concerned, we have emerged as a leader, and will continue to be a leader, because the rate of capacity addition of renewables will be unmatched by any other country except China. And no other country is going to keep adding 50 gigawatts per year. We are foraying into new areas. Offshore wind will be a huge opportunity for all of you, because we look at about 70, 80, 100 gigawatts from offshore wind. And green hydrogen is going to be a huge opportunity, because we have set a target for ourselves of 5 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030. Actually, it will be more, in the region of almost about 10 million tons of green hydrogen. Now, and so far as our renewables energy push is concerned, again, we had a supply chain problem. We had a modest manufacturing capacity of cells and modules, but the bulk of our cells, modules, etc. was imported. Dumping started happening to kill off our capacity, so we put in place duties, safeguard duties to protect the fledgling industry. That didn't work, so we put in a tariff barrier. And we've started manufacturing. We came out with 2 schemes for production-linked incentive for manufacturing. Now, that has resulted manufacturing, right from polysilicon to the module stage. Now, that has resulted in a production capacity which is now under construction of about 48,000 megawatts, out of which 24,000 megawatts would be from polysilicon onwards. Now, much of it, bulk of it, I will need myself. But there will be a little bit maybe left over for export, but the bulk of it I will need myself. So that capacity is coming. In fact, this is a capacity which we have induced under our production-linked incentive scheme. Our manufacturers, our industry are themselves, outside of this scheme also, are themselves adding capacity. So actually the total capacity of manufacturing which is coming up, which is going to come up, is about 100 gigawatts. Now, so we'll need about 50 gigawatts ourselves, so 50 gigawatts will be available for export. So we are diversifying, and up now, as of now, about 80-90% of the manufacturing capacity is located in China. So there was a need for diversification of supply chains. We are doing that. Similarly, as I said, there is a need for diversification or multiplication of supply chains for storage. So we are happy that we have found lithium reserves here, but because all the available lithium reserves have again been tied up, about 80% of that have again been tied up by one country. So and there was supply chain issues. You see, the countries which look ahead, they gain, they prosper. So that is the lesson here. So, there are different chemistries which are being experimented with, sodium ion, etc. So hopefully, if those chemistries succeed, and I believe that sodium ion is likely to succeed, that will ensure that the world has a diversified supply chain and not dependent on one country or two countries. It's absolutely necessary that we have a diversified supply chain, looking at the experience which we've got. The hydrogen, again, is the future, and that is what we are invested in, because as I said, we want our steel to go green. We want our, reduce our dependence on, gray hydrogen made from natural gas for manufacturing fertilizers. We want to replace it with green hydrogen. Here also, you see, we came across protectionist tendencies by some country. Not some country, but some countries, large number of countries. We've come across protectionist tendencies. So we used to hear about the benefits of free trade, etc. Now all that has been forgotten. Now you have protectionism going on. So that is the world. That is the world. People look at their interests first. So we'll have to work with it as far as possible. The WTO hasn't worked. Their adjudication mechanism is a non-starter. It's dead in the water. There's no judges there. So it hasn't worked. So we'll have to contend with that. That's the reality. But we'll need the green hydrogen, green ammonia ourselves, a lot of it. We'll need it, and we are manufacturing it. The problem again, now the problem areas, as far as viability is concerned, 2-3 problem areas insofar as electricity is concerned. Viability. Now, viability was a major issue. You see, the bulk of most of our distribution companies are public sector. That's true in many developed countries as well. But the problem is that, it was also, because it was in the public sector and because we are a vibrant and competitive democracy, therefore it got mired into politics, so the governments wouldn't want the tariff to go up, so the tariffs were not cost competitive, etc. Government departments would not pay for the power which they consumed. State governments would announce subsidies or free electricity and not pay for it, etc. All these problems were there, as happens in the public sector, as happens in the public sector in a democracy where people fight elections, and therefore they need to keep in mind the sensitivities of their voters, or make announcements like free electricity, etc. So this challenge was there, and there was also a challenge of inefficiency. We've taken care of that, and this was something which the country had virtually given up on. There were attempts at amending the Electricity Act to put in place measures to bring in more responsibility, etc. So a bill was introduced in Parliament, it went to the Standing Committee. Fair enough. Standing Committee is fair because electricity is a concurrent list, so you need a Standing Committee to deliberate on it. But the Standing Committee gave its reports, whatever. Now, so we have challenges which are common in a democracy. We've negotiated those challenges. And today, we made the sector viable. How did we do it? We decided that, look, you can announce whatever subsidy or give electricity free, etc. But if you take electricity from, sources outside your state, if you are generating it by yourself, fine. You pay for the coal, you pay the workers. But if you are buying electricity from, generating companies which are multi-state generating companies, which supply to more than one DISCOM, then you will have to pay for it. If you don't pay for the electricity promptly on time, your access to the central grid gets cut off. And the access to the central grid getting cut off automatically, this is automatic, there is no human intervention. That means that your access to the market is stopped. So now that has worked. So now the current payments are totally up to date. The legacy dues, which were about 135,000 crores, has come down to in the region of about 70,000 crores, 75,000 crores in just about 6-7 months. And all those legacy dues will be liquidated in another 5-6 months. So power has now become viable. Earlier, some units had gone to NCLT. Now there, the prices which were achieved in the NCLT bidding process was 1.5 crores per megawatt, whereas the cost of construction of a megawatt today is about 7 crores, 8 crores. Now some plants which had gone to NCLT, they are getting bids of 6 crores, 7 crores per megawatt. Now that's the surest sign, if any sign is required, that our sector has become viable, is investments is viable, and investments are coming. That's great. That's what we've done. We said you have to pay. The second thing which we have done is that we made everything conditional. Now people used to, DISCOMs used to get financing from Power Finance Corporation and REC, PFC and REC. We've changed the prudential norms, and with the help of the RBI, we persuaded the RBI also to circulate these revised prudential norms to all the banks. Now, my contention was simple. My contention was that no bank or financial institution should lend to any entity which does not have the wherewithal to repay the loan, plain and simple. And so, therefore, if any entity which is running at a loss, now that entity cannot be eligible for any loan until unless it identifies the reasons for the loss, puts in place measures to reduce and eliminate that loss over a time frame, and gets its state government's commitment to it. So that has worked. That is one. The second is that the borrowing of different states is capped. So I made presentations before the Finance Commission. The Finance Commission agreed that the 0.5, an additional borrowing space of 0.5% of the GDP will be available to all those states who observe these conditions, who follow these conditions. Conditions are that number one, your tariff must be up to date. The second is whatever subsidies you announced must be calculated and must be paid promptly. And by and large, whatever sort of tariff is fixed, that should be cost reflective. By and large, these are the conditions. And you'll be happy to know that as a result of these efforts, we also said that any future investments, any future assistance from the central government will be contingent on these measures. As a result of that, the losses, AT&C losses have come down. I'm talking about the all India level, from 22% to 16.8%. So that's a reduction of almost 7% in past 2-3 years. And we believe that will go down to 12% in the next couple of years with these measures. And then we'll go down. So now most of my distribution companies are viable. We made other interventions. Any company which had larger exposure, we put central government nominees on the board. We revised the board composition. We put in place energy audits, energy accounting, energy audits. So become viable. The ACS and ARR gap has come down to 15%. It used to be 67%. It's come down to 15%. So we made the system viable. So we made it in such a way that ultimately everybody had to agree. We said that you do this, otherwise you don't get any assistance from the central government. Sorry. I can't keep on putting money into a bottomless pit. You won't get any loans either. So no politics works in that. I have also, told the central government, the Ministry of Finance, that any state which has any outstanding loans from the central government, they cannot borrow unless they get clearance from the Ministry of Finance, the Government of India. I said that you should not be giving permission to take loans to give freebies, like 100 units free or 200 units free. That should not happen. Loans should be taken for investment. Investments in capital goods, investments in the future. So that's my contention to the Ministry of Finance. So these are problems, of course, which you have in a democracy, a robust democracy, which is a federal democracy. These are problems which you have. But the viability problem we have licked. Now I have another ambition, and that is, you see, the Electricity Act itself said that you can have multiple distribution companies operating in the same area of supply. They only added one clause, which is a restrictive clause, and that said that the distribution has to be through your own owned network. So we said that we want to remove that. So we made, we drafted amendments, we went to the parliament. Now, all these things, you see, the state governments see and their parties see as attempts to restrict their ability to give freebies, give free units, etc. That's not so. That's not so. So when I introduced it in parliament, there was a holla. But I introduced it. And then we also said that yes, it can go to standing committee, because as I said, that this is on the concurrent list. And that is the tradition. Electricity bills are sent to the concurrent list, so that are sent to the standing committee, so that the standing committee of parliament discusses on it, gives their views. Ultimately, the government will decide. So it's gone to the standing committee. We expect a report any more, and then we'll take it to the parliament. Now, the future, as I see it, is going to be defined by the certain energy security is something. I'm looking at the global future. Now, earlier, the global discourse was on transition. Only transition. Nobody talked about access. Even now, nobody talks about access. There are about 800 million people who do not have access to electricity. Nobody talks about it. We talk about it because we happen to head the International Solar Alliance, and one of the missions of the International Solar Alliance is to make sure that everybody gets access to energy using renewables, using solar or renewables. That's the International Solar Alliance. We head it. And let me tell you this, that I don't see any developed country coming forward to do anything about it. The International Solar Alliance has started programs to get electricity available to people who do not have access to electricity in countries in Africa. 733 million people do not have access to electricity. So ISA is doing it, but no country is coming forward to help, except us. We are doing it. We are helping. Now that's the problem. So earlier people talked about energy transition, then after, but they didn't talk about the problem of access. How can you have transition unless you have access? So no, I haven't received any answer to that question. But then you had the Ukraine problem. And then people start talking about energy transition, they started talking about energy security. Fine. So the discourse, let me tell you, is going to be very clear. And people, no country is going to make any compromises insofar as the availability of energy is concerned. You know, when you have plentiful energy available and you think that you can transition, you will do that. But if you have short of energy, you will not make any compromises with availability of energy. That's the real truth. And that is universal. The future, therefore, number one, the availability of energy will remain a question. And the availability of energy at affordable prices will remain a question. Market design is an issue. We've changed the market designs. Now, what used to happen was that one particular commodity, the gas, was in short supply, so the gas, the based electricity prices should have gone up. The prices of all electricity, all forms of electricity, even wind-based energy went up. That makes sense. So we put a cap. So that again is something which will have to be done. But as a world, as a universe, availability of energy is going to be an issue. First, primary. The second issue, I think, needs to be access, because we owe a duty to all the countries, which have not been able to provide access. We need to be able to go out and help them. We shall do so. And they don't get investments. We get investments. All these capacity which we have put up, 180 gigawatts of non-fossil, etc. It's all by investments. I don't have to put in any money myself. As I said, Bloomberg called us the most attractive destination for investment in renewables. So we are, and we shall continue to be, because we have designed it that way. Our bids are, the digital. We have payment security mechanisms. Our bidding documents are public. We have a dispute resolution mechanism which decides within 30 days. Whatever they decide, we agree. So litigation is out. So everybody gets paid. That's why I'm getting investment. But countries in Africa, they don't get investment. We need to put in place mechanisms so that they start getting investments. We need to have funds which will provide guarantees for payment, which will provide guarantees against expropriation, etc. Then you will get investment. So the future, as far as the world challenge is concerned, that's access, I think, should. If the world has any conscience, which is a debatable point, whether the world has a conscience, should remain a challenge, the access. Availability, of course, will be a challenge, because no country is going to compromise on availability. Transition will happen. Transition will happen if we put in place enablers. All of us need to get together and start manufacturing storage. All of us need to do that, so that we have round-the-clock renewables. Without that, you can't have transition. All of us need to make sure that this green hydrogen project, initiative succeeds. All of us need to do that, so that we can make sure that the feedstock can move from fossil to non-fossil. We need to make sure that we help each other instead of putting up trade barriers. The trade barriers won't work. They won't really work. Huge subsidies won't work. They don't really work. Now, and we need not compromise. You see, I see, again, a hedging. In all the discussions which are happening in G20, I see a hedging. Number one, we started off with green hydrogen. Then people said that, okay, hydrogen need not be fully green. It can be part green. It can be low carbon hydrogen. What is this? If you want to transition, you don't transition to a low carbon future. You have to transition to a net zero future. You can't afford to add any more CO2 to the atmosphere. But all that seems to have been forgotten in all these discussions in G20. That's what my officers tell me. We will have the ministerial sometime in late July or early August. then we'll discuss with the ministers. But that's it. So now people, instead of talking only about green hydrogen or green ammonia, are talking about less carbon hydrogen, low carbon hydrogen. Right? So that won't help. That won't help. And as I said, we see signs of global warming every day. We see it every day. The temperatures are going through the roof. Even in United Kingdom, I believe in London, the temperatures have touched 35 degrees, etc. We need to get real. As far as our government is concerned, we are very clear in mind. Number one, of course, we will not compromise on availability of energy. But given that, our priority remains to go green, to become environment friendly as possible. Our per capita emissions are one of the lowest. We want to reduce them still further. We've done that. We had pledged that by 2030, we'll reduce the emissions intensity for economy by 33%. We've achieved that already. So we've said now that by 2030, we'll reduce the emissions intensity for economy by 45%. So we are going to further half that. So our per capita emissions will become 1/6 of the world emissions. That's where we are. In between, on a closing note, there was a time, maybe about a year back, 2 years back, when I was smug and complacent. I said that, okay, I've added enough capacity. I've made it possible for 112,000 megawatts to be wheeled from here to there. I have strengthened the distribution system and my rate of growth of renewable energy capacity is the fastest in the world. So I can step back and relax. And then, the COVID ended, and then the spot began, and now, I'm having this huge growth in demand, which is a great thing. My economy is growing, but which is actually a challenge. We have to add more and more capacity. Thank you.